Greetings, ye lovers of old cameras the world over. In this video, I'll talk about the Olympus Trip 35. I'll talk about how it performed during a recent One Film Photo Walk event, and of course, I will show you some photos. The Olympus Trip 35 was a very successful camera made between the late 60s and the late 80s. Apparently about 10 million of them were made at the time, and because of these large numbers that were made, and the length of time over which they were made, they can be found for quite cheap and in various conditions. The copy I have right now is in absolute mint condition. Like seriously mint. Like brand new actually. I did own one in the past where the only thing holding the lens to the camera was the exposure meter cable. I did manage to use the camera by holding the lens pressed against the camera. Desperate times. Anyway, it is a fully automatic 35mm film camera. It is made of lightweight metal and it has a classic chrome and black finishing. The lens is a multi-coated 40mm f2.8 Zuiko glass lens with 4 elements in 3 groups. Oh yeah. And it can focus as close as 0.9 meters. Not bad. Around the lens is a selenium cell used by the light meter. This means that the light meter is solar powered and requires absolutely no batteries to work. It also means that the filters are automatically compensated for. Bonus. The aperture settings are around the lens, but you only need these aperture settings when using flash. For all other times, just set it to A for automatic and let the camera do its thing. You can pick between ISO/ASA 25 to 400. The camera can choose shutter speeds between 1/40th and 1/200th of a second. While using flash, that is when you set one of the apertures, the camera sets the shutter speed to 1/40. You can then set the aperture to suit the situation. The shutter release is on top of the camera in the usual place and is threaded so it accepts shutter release buttons and shutter release cables. If the exposure meter thinks you're going to underexpose in its extreme setting, that is at f2.8 and 1/40th of a second, it will lock the shutter. It would also display a red flag in the viewfinder for you to see why it's locked the shutter. In this situation, a flash may be necessary. For that, there's an accessory shoe on top of the camera and a PC sync socket in front. Talking about the viewfinder, it is large and bright with parallax guidelines. There's also a little hole that allows you to view the aperture setting and the focusing distance icon. So effectively, you don't have to remove your eye from the viewfinder to change settings. That's always appreciated. The lens obstructs the bottom right corner of the viewfinder slightly though. That sometimes is quite annoying. Focusing is manual, of course, by a focusing scale. There are 4 icons representing a headshot, 2-person portrait, a group portrait, and infinity, which is represented by the mountains icon. There is also an actual distance scale in meters and feet on the bottom part of the lens. So how do we load this camera? The back is opened the normal way via the little latch at the bottom. The film goes in on the left-hand side as usual, and the film is passed through the spindle, ensuring that the gears engage the sprockets. The film is advanced via a thumb wheel, which is sometimes more comfortable to use actually than a lever. You can keep an eye on progress in the frame counter window, which is right beside the shutter release button. It resets every time the back is opened and closed. When the film is done, you can rewind by first enabling rewind by pressing the button at the bottom of the camera and then winding the rewind lever. Okay, so like I said before, I've used a Trip in the past, but it was a beaten up, messed up, old copy with a semi-detached lens. The shooting experience wasn't the best, but I pulled it off. But for this particular camera, in all its absolute mint glory, it's actually the first time I'll be using this camera ever. I've never tested it, so effectively I've only put in the first test roll into it. And where better to test this camera than on a film photo walk with the amazing One Film group. I loaded it with the usual Poundland film and headed to Waterloo Bridge on the south bank of the Thames, in actual London for a change, not East London or North London, or one of those funny parks you always see me in. I don't really go around there so often these days. The deal is, we walk the path, we take photos related to the theme, this is very important. Meet up at the end where we get a roll developed, only one roll is permitted, hence the name of the group. Anyway, afterwards, we congregate in a very, very lovely pub, enter 3 of our favorite prints, that qualify according to the rules, lay them all out, and then go around voting for our favorites. The photo with the most number of votes wins. Simple, right? Apparently not. In my excitement, and because the light was exceptional in London on the day, I went ahead and took mostly non-qualifying photos. In fact, 3 of my top photos that I took on the day didn't qualify for the contest. But hey, needless to say, I didn't win. Not by a long stretch. Besides, there were so many capable shooters out there, so I salute them. So, you've won today.
I have won today. My Cindy Sherman inspired photography, I won't give you no bullshit on it.
The photo that won was actually one that I voted for as well, so kudos. You can usually view all these photos by looking for hashtag #OneFilm, that's #1_film on Instagram. I have to admit I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the prints though. At first, the fact that they came out at all, since it was the first time and the first test roll I was putting through the camera, but the quality of the photos astonished me. I wasn't really expecting it. The Zuiko lens on this baby appears to be just as sharp as my RC, and the exposure, it's spot on. All my photos were perfectly exposed, even under difficult light. And goodness me, it does earn the Trip name. It's so lightweight, and I can carry this camera around on my wrist for hours and totally forget it's there. In terms of size, it sits somewhere between the RC and the SB, so roughly about the same size as an Olympus 35 RD, but a lot lighter. I highly recommend this camera for holidays and street photography actually. I only find 2 things slightly annoying about this camera. The first thing is the way you focus with it. I'm not a fan of scale focusing. I love the rangefinder system instead. Once or twice during the photo walk, I accidentally forgot to change from a 2-person scale to a group shot, or from infinity to a 2-person scale or something like that. But I was saved by f16 on the day because it was reasonably sunny. The other thing is, the lens obstructs the viewfinder a little bit in the left bottom corner. This is quite annoying for me because I like to see everything that I'm shooting. Apart from that, it's a near perfect camera. And if you've been eyeing one up for a while, my advice is to get one. They're cheap, and if they're in good condition, they're excellent. Until next time, Alvida.